So what's on the other side of the kind of typological, balance is extremely neurotic, introverted thinking. I'd probably say is represented from the really, really radical conspiracies, because the more radical you get with them, the more imaginative, creative, and complex they become, which is really interesting because that is how an introvert works. It's all about projecting the mental world onto the object for an introvert. So the really crazy theories which are built around stories of their own unproven reality, like I guess, I don't know much about them, but the well-developed, QAnon stuff or something like that, and other numerous things are very much, developed, from what you could call, I guess, for example's sake, a schizophrenic-like mind set, because a psychic break is all to do with emotion. Emotional breaks out of the left hemisphere world of logic and making it an entirely alternative reality from what actually is going on in one way or another. So it wouldn't be a surprise if schizophrenics basically are generally more introverted than extroverted. There probably is, I would presume, a trend there. And that inflated introverted thinking, or the inflated introverted thinking types, are more favoured to fit into that way of thinking, because being a radical conspiracy theorist, and I mean radical, really radical, makes one seem independent from the groupthink of the majority. And this is a massive selling point for any really introverted person, I think, because they like independence. They like independence, projecting their reality into the world that's also quick to judge, and you have that with the rashness of emotional, radical conspiracy. It's like this, that, and that, which is, which I guess is similar to high unagreeableness, but also being weirdly high in openness. Because if you look at something like, Alex Jones, his high unagreeableness and high openness to experience makes a strange paradox, because he is passionate, creative, definitely, but also compassionate, because he sees himself as trying to find hidden truth for the sake of the people. That's usually his premise, in his opinion. Let's not forget, he probably has high neuroticism as well, but if you have high unagreeableness, you usually are lower in compassion because of individualism. But that itself doesn't mean you won't have compassion. The sage archetype, the archetype of the sage is kind of like that. That, the individualist who is compassionate out of openness to experience and knowledge, the sage who guides others, who says something like, the truth will set you free. So I don't think, something like compassion is completely based in agreeableness. Creativity out of openness expands where compassion exists, you could say. Compassion can then exist or live within creativity itself if there is a large degree of openness within the personality of the person. But if that creativity is conflated with reality through introverted projection and overrides cause and effect of the physical world or something like that, you kind of end up with a blueprint to support or create radical conspiracy, because you can have conspiracies that are definitely worthy of investigation, but the conspiracies that are extremely baseless are just that, they're just abstract creativity. So that's kind of an introverted kind of view of something like that. And of course this can relate to the pandemic with super radical conspiracies, but really, really related to it or not, most people are conspiracy theorists. All people have a degree of subjectivity that varies between one another, that, influences how we think the world works. That is what philosophy is, basically, to conspire up ideas about what we think is true, to mentally plot about the world. It's obviously, just how far, are you going to take that, or is it going to go, That's where the radical conspiracy gets out of hand.